Beast. It's just a follow-on from the things that could bump in the night video Marty did earlier on. Now, I haven't really had any serious, strange, paranormal occurrences or anything like that. I've had a few minor, pathetic incidents, really, but maybe not worth mentioning. But yeah, there's nothing major about them. The first one was in the mid-90s. My mate Tom, he was seeing a girl that he met at work named Lisa, and she lived by Birmingham Airport. And over Friday night, Tom used to go down and spend the weekend with her. And he phoned me up the once. I was living in Darlington at the time. I was living on my own. And he says, Lisa's got a bunch of mates round tonight. I don't fancy staying here with a bunch of women. Do you want to go out for a drink? And I said, okay then. So I drove down. And when I got there, the story was Lisa and her mates had hired a psychic, and we took the mickey, so that's Mystic Meg and Pulling Leg and all the rest of it. But I can't remember exactly how many women was there, but there was one short for the booking, and that could have just put an extra couple of quid in. But Lisa says to me, I says, are you interested in all this? I said, nah, not really. So it's a bit of fun, ain't it, you know. But I said, do you want to have a go? And I says, yeah, why much money? I can't remember how much it was, 12, 15 quid, perhaps something like that. So I jumped in, and I said, but as long as I can go first, so me and Tom can go out for a pint. All right then. So they've got this 1930s standard layout house, and the front room was divided from the back, which they'd actually turned the front really into a dining room, and the living room is at the back, and they've got these like concertina dividing doors. Anyway, this woman turned up, and I went into the dining room, set herself up, and I says, right, who's first? And I saw it's going to be me. I called in, door shut behind me, sat down and said, have you got anything personal like keys? So I gave her a bunch of keys, and they did all this, so here we go. And well, pretty much that week, it was very, very near to that. At that time in my life, I was into the Beatles, and I liked John Lennon, and I bought myself a big black and white picture of John Lennon, probably taken in around 1971 after the Beatles had split. So he got the longer hair and the round glasses. This was after he had his head shaved, you know, and started growing
head and shoulders.
In
a picture frame.
It was a good picture, and just because I like John Lennon. So this lady says, I says, you've just bought a picture. I says, it's a man who's a composer, and he's known for keyboards, piano, and guitar, mainly guitar, but it's more piano now. And I thought, it's bloody John Lennon. Yeah, I mean, it could be a number of people.
I mean, it's pretty.
What's the chances?
Yeah.
And then, one of my aunties, my auntie Dot, my dad was one of 9, and Dot was one of his sisters, and she died. And she said, and this was within a couple of months before this, so it was something that happened 20 years previously. You know, it was still quite new. And it says, I can see, and named 3 of my dad's brothers, and I said, I can see I'm going down a path to take flowers somewhere, and that really, it upset me, but it threw me, because that was too specific. Because I was ready to take a mickey out of it, really.
Yeah, of course.
It was like, do you know a man named John who's got dark hair? Or you met a crossroads in your life? Well, we all do, we all are, kind of thing, you know.
Exactly.
But now she was very, very specific, and
because there's generalness, you know, of things they can highlight
vague
that could appeal to 9 out of 10 people, but with the picture that you just brought is very specific. It's on the nose, isn't it? It's really going to get your attention.
Yeah, it did. I was saying to Marty, I'll try to analyse this. Number 1, she's real. Okay, is the proper article. Number 2, again, this was the mid-90s, so the internet existed, but it wasn't household. So I thought but I couldn't have done it because she didn't know, and I didn't know. And Tom didn't really know unless it was a setup, and he wouldn't have done it anyway because he spoke about it since. But nobody would have known I would have been the first reading that night. So she couldn't have looked on the electoral roll, because you can look on the electoral roll, you can find out family and all, jobs and all kinds of information about people, which she seemed to know. But if I'd have booked and give me name and address, and it had turned up a week later, then I've got the time to do it. But again, this is a spare the minute thing. I didn't even know I was anyway. So I don't think that was correct. The only other thing I can think of, which is, it's fantasy really, and I don't believe it, but you've got to consider the fact that it might be plausible. And that was, she somehow hypnotised me. She got me to give out a bunch of answers and information, and then told me, when I bring you out your hypnotic trance, you will not remember being in the hypnotic trance, and giving me the answers. So therefore, I'm sitting there thinking, how does she know of this? Well, 5 minutes previously, when I was in a trance, I told her. But that's ridiculous. That is possible.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's not feasible.
She'd be very powerful. It's not very powerful sort of
yeah,
person to be able to do that.
It's not feasible. The other story was, before I was married, I was living with my ex-wife. I lived a couple of streets away from my mum and dad. My mum and dad had gone away on holiday for a fortnight abroad. I was the only one with the key. I'm an only child. So I used to get up in the morning from my ex-wife's. I used to get to my mum and dad's, open up, make sure everything was secure. The sheds hadn't been burgled, the windows were tight and secure, nobody had been in, it was all okay. Sometimes I'd do myself a bit of breakfast, and then I'd go to work. Then at the tea time, I'd finish work, I'd go to the gym, I'd come back to my mum and dad's, let myself in again, check everything, and close the curtains and put a light on different days, so it looked like there was somebody in the house. And they've got a burglar alarm anyway, but it just looks like there's somebody in there all the time. Well, anyway, this had been going on for a few days, and I've been doing this as a routine. And I went in the one morning and had a bit of breakfast, checked the place, sitting there eating my breakfast in the room. Don't bother putting television on because there was nothing worth watching. So I'm just eating my breakfast. I'll go and wash up, then go to work. That night, I came back as usual to check the house. I let myself in, went round. I went into the living room and stopped cold, because on the chair right next to the settee, where my little spot, my little seat on the settee where I used to sit, on one of the chairs, there was 6 brand new pennies, 1p pieces, unissued, brand new. So there's 3 on the bottom row, then 2, then 1 in a triangle shape, plonked there on the middle of the seat squab. And definitely wasn't there any other days, and it wasn't there that morning. And the reason is, I know this because I'm sat there in the living room and it's right next to me, and nobody else has been in the house, and I've not been able to explain that at all. But saying to Martin, the thing about these things, well, I've noticed when weird things have happened in my life, at the time, I've brushed them off.
Yeah. And
I've not took any real. I thought, well, that's a bit strange. In this case, I did actually take a picture. I had one of my early, I can't remember if it's Sony Ericsson, but it's had a camera on it. I think it's the first camera I had on a phone, and I took a picture of it. And I've just been trying to find it, but I can't find it. It's on there somewhere, about 2,000 pictures. But I remember thinking, well, that's really, really strange, right? I don't think any ghosts have been in here. Right, no, this ain't a setup. There's been no burglars. No burglars have got in and left 6p, you know. And it was the fact that it was in a perfect triangle and brand new, unissued coins. It was as if there was old tatty ones. You'd pull out your loose change out your pocket. Yeah. So, like a fool, I mean, I regret it now. All I did was scoop them up. My mum and dad have got a loose change jar where they chuck the coppers through the year. And at the end of the year, they empty it, they count it out. So I just chucked it in with them, and I never really, how silly, it's such a weird occurrence like that. I just brushed it off, and it was only later, I thought, Whoa, yeah, that was really strange. The last one was on my 18th birthday. My mum and dad bought me a gold St Christopher, and I've never really been into jewellery. I've never liked jewellery. I've got my silver cross, which I've had for about 15 years now, but that's about it. That's about my limit. I never even liked wearing a wedding ring when I was married. I just had one for jewellery. And anyway, they bought me this St Christopher, and I'd got no interest in it. I was crap really. When I look back, I'm ashamed. I'm their only son, and they bought me this beautiful gold St Christopher. It must have cost them a lot of money, and I just wasn't bothered. At the time, I'd have been happier with a socket set, or a box of screwdrivers or some spanners, so I could work on the car and the bike and mech stuff. But no, it was a bloody St Christopher, and I thought they'd say, "What you bought me that for? It's a waste of money." And I chucked it in a drawer and forgot about it. And it went missing, and that was when I was 18. So that'd be 1986. Don't know where it went. Just totally gone. Disappeared. When I was married, so I got married in 2014. I was living with her at the time. She already lived in the house, and I moved in with her. And basically, Mum called me up and says, "Come round and have a look at this." Well, that day, right, and it kept it until I could come round and see it. This St Christopher had appeared in the middle of the day. My dad was out at work. He was still working at the time. My mum had gone upstairs, had made the bed, gone down and done her jobs for the rest of the day. And when I went back into the bedroom for probably put some washing away or something like that, that St Christopher was lying smack bang in the middle of the bed. Amazing. But the weirdest thing about it is, it was this St Christopher, very distinct. It was gold, and gold is a very, very soft metal compared with other metals. And there was a crack right the way through it, not a tear, but a crack, as if glass would crack right the way through it. So we don't know where that had been, and why it just, over 30 years later on, it had just suddenly appeared one morning, smack bang in the middle of my mum and dad's quilts, when there'd only been my mum in the house. So that's all I've got to say about them, really. I think the major events, I'm just creepy.
They're
little
interesting.
You can't brush them off.
They can't brush them off, and they are very interesting. Now, with the how would that person describe themselves? A medium or what? A psychic?
A psychic.
A psychic. In that situation,
sensitive or whatever.
She did touch on some very interesting facts that were personal to Lee, and that rattled him. Should we say? So it's more than likely, without any sort of deception involved, that she had some sort of spiritual gift. One can only come to that conclusion. And of course there's the counterfeit, of course there are con people, of course, but that doesn't discredit the genuine. But then it begs the question, what is the source of the power? Because I said to Lenny in the previous video, when he was telling me he thought he was a psychic, I'd say, well, I'm a born again Christian, and these things are real, and I don't doubt anything you are telling me, Lenny, because there's always the good and there's the counterfeit. But what's the source? Is it coming from God, or is it coming from an evil spirit? Now, I'll give you a couple of instances where I believe the gifts of the Spirit, according to the Bible, there are gifts. Now, I'll give you two examples. I was the first one. I was on a train visiting my sister, who has a house in Raynham in Kent, and her side of the family are there. And I was travelling on this train, and as people sit opposite you on the old trains, this was in the late 80s. I looked at the face of this lady who had sat down, older lady opposite me, and as I looked into her eyes, the word spiritualist church came to me. Spiritualism came. So I let a period of time go by, I reflected on it, and I thought I'd get in conversation. And I said, somehow I struck up a conversation and then steered it in the direction on, are you comfortable talking about spiritual matters? Yes, I'm very comfortable. Yes, well, I said, I'm a Christian. I go to a Christian church. She says, yes. She says, I go to a spiritualist church. I said, and I looked at her and says, yes, I know, dear. I says, God just told me that 5 minutes back. Now, you may wonder, how did I know that? Well, I couldn't know it, could I? How can I, by looking in her eyes, know that unless I had information given to me by someone or something? Correct? I've got to have the information to know that. The end product was she listened very intently, and I was able to send her some literature and things. And the time just sped by, and it was my time to get off the train to stop. Another incident happened, Leicester Market, on a summer's afternoon. I'm there running the stall, and it's gone quiet, and there's just a few people pottering around. And this chap comes up, begins picking up the tomatoes, which he was able to do. It was pick your own, so he stood there with his brown bag, and he was busily picking his tomatoes. I looked at him, and I just said, without thinking, it just came out of me. I said, you're from the Middle East. And he looked at me, nodded, and carried on picking his tomatoes. And then I said, shall I tell you which country you're from? And he put the tomatoes down on the counter and looked at me. He says, go on then. I said, Lebanon. And he was taken back like that. And he was. And he says, who are you then? I said, nobody. I am a Christian, I said. And we got into conversation. And he says, come round, we'll have a cup of coffee and we'll talk. And I did. I took him a Arabic New Testament. And he sat down one side of the table, and he wanted to convert me to Islam, and I had a great desire for him to know the Lord Jesus as his saviour. And we went backwards and forwards. I can't say he did become a Christian, but we became friends, and every time